I also did not like the show.
If it wasn't obvious enough already, this is a response video and will not make sense without the original. I've linked it in the description, go watch it if you haven't already. Before I get into anything serious, or semi-serious knowing myself, I wanted to point out that I will likely use hyperbole and make jokes in this video. I apologize if they're too similar to each other and thus indistinguishable, making it hard to determine what are actual counterpoints and what are mere jokes, but I wanted to make this video entertaining. Furthermore, MechaKnight, if you were watching this, and I hope you are because this video is mainly directed at you, I wanted to tell you that by saying the things I say, I don't mean to offend you. I have a caricature which I portray on YouTube simply because it makes content more entertaining, and that caricature includes being kind of a dick. I'm not attacking you as a person. I don't think that you are a bad person or that you intended to be hateful with your video. Nor do I think that you or anybody else should refrain from criticizing the show. You have every right to, but just as you have every right to criticize the show, I also have every right to criticize your criticism. And so I wanted to start by listing off some things I actually liked about your video. First and foremost, you watched the show! Seriously, it's insane the amount of people who are willing to spew BS about the show, and then when questioned about what scenes they're referring to, they reply with, "Oh, I don't know, I didn't watch the show." Not a lot of people are willing to sit through a show that they hate, but you did, and so kudos to you for that. Sort of similar to this, you did research. Not much to say on this, besides you know what you're talking about, both when it comes to the Bible and mostly when it comes to the show as well. You also took care to make it clear that you're not trying to offend people and admitted that you may be biased. That takes balls. It would have been so easy to just jump into the metaphorical "I hate the popular thing" circle jerk, but you didn't. You concede points. When the show aligns with the Bible, you actually concede those points despite you admittedly disliking the show. A lot of people would have just left those out or have tried to skirt around them somehow, but you didn't. And thus, it is with great pain that I must say I find your video to be ridiculously misguided. The premise and alternative longer title of your video is Theological Critique of Hazbin Hotel. This is a good idea for a sort of gimmicky video where you take a look at Hazbin Hotel through theological lens. But it's not a good idea for a general critique, which you seem to take this as. You speak and act like Hazbin Hotel is a show made for educating people on Christianity. One of your reasons for making your video is...
I feel like Christianity in mainstream media has been dumbed down and became a straw man of what it actually is.
You're effectively saying mainstream media misrepresents Christianity, which is true, both for better and for worse. But here's the thing. Hazbin Hotel is not trying to represent Christianity. That's not the point of the show, nor is it any of the messages that the show puts forth. Your video treats Hazbin Hotel like a kid who dressed up as Jesus for Halloween but their costume was bad, when in reality that kid dressed up as Spider-Man, except most of that costume fucking fell apart and he was left with a red stripe across the shoulder under which was a white t-shirt. Where the fuck am I going with this analogy? Hazbin Hotel is not meant to be the Judeo-Christian world. It's a world heavily based on it, but with changes. You come so painstakingly close to realizing that throughout your video, and like, come on, I thought adultery was condemned by God, so stop edging me, dude.
There is a noticeable lack of purgatory or limbo. Where is God? He's just absent throughout the show. Like, him as a person does not exist in the show. I also have to say that Lucifer was not a dreamer. Lilith does not exist. She is mentioned once in the entirety of the Bible. There seems to be a noticeable lack of the war in heaven. In the show, it shows that he tempted Adam and Eve with the apple first, then he got struck down. But even after that, it didn't show him like rebelling against God or the rest of heaven falling down. As to hell itself, in the show, it honestly just seems like Los Angeles, fire and brimstone included. The show also suggests that there is layers to hell, or hell has different regions. It's a very popular misconception also. In the show, it's suggested that the more sinful you were on Earth, the more powerful you'll be in hell. That's entirely backwards.
Yes, these things don't make sense because you're looking at them through the tunnel vision inducing glasses of this is the biblical world. It's based on it, but it's not it. That's the issue with your criticism. Having said all that, I want to address some points that I actually think you missed. If an argument isn't replied to here, that means it would be the same point that I brought up just now. The show isn't trying to be an accurate representation of Christianity, therefore it's not valid to criticize it for not being an accurate representation of Christianity.
Where is God? The story of creation requires God because God was the very first being to ever exist, because he has always existed. Without God, there would be no angels, so how could the angels have created Earth if they weren't the created? God created the heavens, the heaven and the earth, the sky and the ocean, the ground we walk on. He created every living plant, he created every living animal, he created humanity. So where is he?
Great question, also something that the community has asked. One of the most common replies, also something found in your video's comment section, is that God is excluded so as to not be offensive. For an in-universe explanation, my headcanon is that the world of Hazbin Hotel is a deist world. If you, dear viewer, don't know what deism is, ha! Fuck you, mom and dad! I told you those advanced literature classes would be useful. Deism, in short, is the idea that a god, not unlike the Christian God, created the earth, setting everything in motion, then left the earth to its own devices, refusing to interact with it. I think this makes perfect sense for Hazbin Hotel. God creates earth, heaven, the natural order of things like dying and ending up in heaven or hell, and the angels. Then God just goes to get milk. Forever. So there's no perfect authority, and thus the angels are a sort of self-governing body.
In the show, it's suggested that the more sinful you were on Earth, the more powerful you'll be in hell.
So I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to here, but I might just be forgetting something. It's been a hot minute since I've seen the show. I will say, however, that even if it's not explicitly mentioned, it's at least somewhat true, but not really that directly. I think it's more that if you're the sinful kind of person on Earth, then you're more likely to fuck over other people in hell just to get to the top. Much like in our world, the best way to get to the top is to be uncaring of others, or be born into it. If you're talking about how overlords are generally feared, and Alistair and Box, for example, are generally seen as very powerful, I think that's more to do with how they own so many souls, but I'm not sure, that's just an assumption.
I should also mention that Charlie is probably a Nephilim.
You say that Charlie might be a Nephilim, and you do provide reasons, I just think they're a little long-winded for my video, and I'm making this with the assumption that people have watched your video. Anyway, you say that Charlie might be a Nephilim, which translates to giant because of her height. I'm not really sure if that's valid, considering most people in hell are just really tall, besides Lucifer for some reason. Nonetheless, I found this a cool idea, and it shows that Hazbin Hotel did give you some fun, even if it wasn't whilst watching it, but rather than thinking about it. Even if it did give you more headaches than it did fun. More on that later.
The show doesn't explain this, but doesn't show how sinners can die. They made a joke about it in the pilot, but in the show they do not explain it at all.
From what I remember, it's alluded to that sinners will slowly regenerate no matter the injury, except if it was caused by angelic weaponry. As for what happens when they die for the second time, I think it's better that we don't know. Maybe they're sent to the lower rings, or double hell as Angel Dust puts it, or maybe they just cease to be. But the very fact that we don't know what it is, and they don't know what it is what makes it scary for them. It could be far worse than what they already endure, and they just don't know.
Okay, where are the biblical figures?
This whole category is kinda To be honest, when you have actual questions rather than criticisms, such as this whole category, a lot of it can be answered by they already crammed in way too much. As far as I know, Amazon only greenlit one season at first, and they only got 8 episodes, so the story was already really crammed together. They had to make do with what they had. But now that the show is getting more seasons, we can expect more biblical figures to show up. Abel is already confirmed.
Now, near the end of the show, the characters realizing they don't know how to get to heaven, they have to fight off the exorcist. And the army is led by Adam, which, again, I don't know why he would want to kill his own kids, but the role of general would be assigned to Michael, Archangel Michael, as mentioned in Revelations 12, verse 7 to 9. He'll lead the armies of heaven to defeat Satan.
As you yourself previously said, the Exorcist army was more like a covert operation team. The exorcism was covered up, only the army and Sarah knew, and Emily even called Sarah out on it. If Michael exists and he's a righteous figure, he might not have even agreed. But Adam, who's clearly a piece of shit, did agree, and so he's the general.
At the end of the day, what's the point of the exterminations? This is less of a theological critique and more a critique on the show. In Hell, it showed that they're terrible people. They were willing to fight each other for the pettiest of reasons. So why not just do like a CIA and do some psyops, make Hell go into this giant civil war, drop a whole bunch of angelic metal down there, make them fight each other, kill each other, then voila, you manage Hell's population without having to lay or deploy a single troop down there.
To extend your previous point about Hell is basically Los Angeles, Hell is basically like our world in that regard. We have weapons that kill people, but we still seem to be growing in numbers. Over time, people would just become powerful again. First, it likely to be some kind of tribal thing. The strong will lead because no one dares attack them out of fear. And just like humans developed in our world, sinners will develop civilization again in that one. They won't kill all of themselves, the strong will dominate the weak, and they'll be right back to where they started. Furthermore, it's entirely possible that Heaven did try that, since Cormula was able to supply an entire army with angelic weaponry. It's entirely possible that Heaven did exactly as you said, but it backfired as those in power remained in power and Heaven just armed Hell against itself. Honestly, that's something I can totally imagine happening in Hazbin's world. I agree that politics are polarized. I don't think I agree with you politically, and I have a negative view of religion generally, but I don't want to make this discussion about politics, so I'm just going to concede this point. Now I wanted to end this video with something more positive because of recency bias, but I already praised your video at the beginning of mine, and any more praising is going to cost you a promise to not tell anybody, a hotel room, and 20 bucks. So I thought the next best thing is some constructive criticism, not necessarily about your critique itself, but your video. Remember how I said that Hazbin Hotel brought you some fun and enjoyment? I think that's because there are parts in your video where you seem to be genuinely passionate when talking about the show. Like when you bring up Adam for the first time, or when you theorize about Charlie being a Nephilim. I think you should lean more into this. I think it's important to have some positivity in every negative video, whether that be positive comments about the thing you're talking about or just silly jokes. And this also helps with the next thing. Telling people to not harass anyone. Now, this is of course said with good intentions, but I honestly think it just makes the issue worse. You see, most people who watch your videos and then decide, I'm gonna go tell a voice actor or animator to off themselves, aren't going to be persuaded by you telling them to not harass people. But it most definitely puts the idea in people's head that it's a possibility to harass people. Most people will recoil from that because they're not insane, but sadly that's not everybody. It's a whole other discussion to be had, but I just wanted to bring it up because a lot of people don't seem to think about it too deeply. The next thing is, you should script your videos if they're not scripted already. I cannot tell if you have a pre-written script or not, but you frequently stumble over your words and have long pauses. If you script your videos beforehand, you can avoid this, and you can also have multiple takes without risking losing your train of thought. This is, for example, my 5th take trying to say this one paragraph in my script, and I'm finally able to say I fucked it up. I really did. Lastly, I wanted to again highlight that this video idea isn't bad. It's just that it takes itself a little too seriously. It fundamentally misunderstands what Hazbin Hotel is. But if it was done in more like a gimmicky kind of style, it would be absolutely fine. A silly example, but like challenge runs in video games. I myself don't plan to make a lot of videos like this, but I figured, hey, I might as well try it out. I really hope it was enjoyable though, and thanks for watching.